Frank's biography a little bit, so you know a little bit about Frank, and he has a very special presentation for us. So Frank, obviously, is the president and founder of the Settlement Project. He's worked in the area of international relations and peace mediation for 42 years. His peace missions have included negotiations during the Gulf War, work in conflict zones in Israel and Palestine, India and Kashmir. And I know Frank has traveled to over 100 countries in the world. I think he's lost count of how many countries he's been to. He has provided service in refugee camps in Croatia and Eritrea, Ethiopia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, mediation in revolutionary centers in southern Philippines, Sri Lanka, and elsewhere. Dr. Kaufmann completed his doctorate studies at Vanderbilt University, and he's also widely published as a well-known speaker on social, cultural, and political dimensions of current affairs. He is the editor-in-chief of the New World Encyclopedia, a widely used, values-based general knowledge encyclopedia. And under his editorial leadership, the Peace Journal, Dialogue, and Alliance was named one of the top 10 journals on peace mediation by the independent panel commissioned by ATLA. In 2010, Dr. Kaufmann was awarded the Visionary of Peace Award in Ireland, and Dr. Kaufmann serves on boards of several international peace organizations. Let's please welcome Dr. Frank Kaufmann.
War happens when there are enemies who seek to ravage a non-negotiable in our lives. War happens when we must defend treasure even at the cost of our lives. So the treasure is our children, the treasure is our country, and we here have come to the place where we no longer have the option except to fight at the cost of our lives. I happened to stumble across a little piece from James O'Keefe this morning, staring at my phone or social media. He said, "What is your price? Is it $1 million? Is it $10 million?" He says, if your price is not your life, you're for sale. And he said, truth seekers have no other price as the price of your life. And I think I didn't catch the whole piece, but it must have been in the context of Charlie while he was making these comments. But he himself, of course, does his work at the price of his life. So that's where we're at. Okay, that's where we're at. So when you have enemies that are at war with you, there's two types of enemies. There's enemies without. These are foreign enemies. And there's enemies within. These are domestic enemies. Enemies without, foreign to our country. Of course, they've infiltrated, but this is the Chinese Communist Party and militant jihadist Islam, especially state-level actors. They are the enemies of America. They are anxious to see its collapse and demise. The battlefields for enemies without are military strength and the designs of diplomacy. This is how you either seek to conquer or remove enemies. Enemies within are people who are invested in ideological capture of institutions. That's what we are in a war with, and the battlefields there are security, namely domestic police and security for our communities, politics, law, and culture. These are the four arenas in which people at war, in terms of domestic enemies, conduct their affairs. What we've heard this morning are people who are involved in war in these particular areas, especially politics, law, and culture. Schools are a kind of a middle ground. We've heard from one of the speakers that schools are more political than even sports teams, more political than politics itself. But that's where we fight our war. The Settlement Project seeks to fight the war at the level of culture. And of course, schools are this kind of middle ground between both culture, law, politics. All right. What is our war? What is the war of the people here in this room? It's an attack on our children, attack on our families, our culture, and our homeland. It's not, okay, I'll leave it at that. That's our war. Okay, the second part of the 5 parts that I wanted to teach is, what is the nature of evil? There's 2 different types of evil. There's criminality, and there's being possessed or in a delusion of a false ideology. Criminality is, strangely, although most people don't think of that, the lesser of the 2 types of evil. Criminals know they're doing wrong. People seek to catch them and imprison them, stop them from doing criminality. They seek power, but they're not courageous people. They act in the shadows. They know they're doing wrong. People who are delusional and possessed by errant ideologies, these people regard the pursuit of power as an obligation, as an expression of virtue. When these people are seeking power at the cost of their lives, they believe this is an act of goodness. That's delusional, and that is a serious enemy. Then you are facing a contender who you can't believe the degree of evil they're willing to perpetrate, and they regard themselves as good. This is a serious matter. And so when you're in the fight, like you guys, when you're doing battle, you see these corrupt SOBs. You see this raw pursuit of power. That's it's like milk in the water. It's an admixture. It's the ideologues that we really need to find out about. Why do people do what they do? Why do people push to have these books in schools? It's not just because, yes, it's because they're, I don't know, it's not just because they're bad people. They believe they're doing something good. What is that? What on earth could possibly be that? That's what this presentation and that's what the settlement is about. Understanding our enemy. Who are these people? How do they think? How is it possible for them to advocate the vile aggression against innocence? Your own children, our own children. So the images are these 2 fellows that were on murder trial and laughing throughout. I don't know if people saw that. That's just plain criminality. They might take a life, they might take 2 lives. The bottom is Yuval Harari, a techno transhumanist. The impact of this man to possibly cause literally millions of human deaths. And he's admired, he's worshipped, he's regarded as a great intellect. These are the people you have to watch out for. These are our enemies. And so what we want to offer is to try to understand who they are, so that when you're face to face with them and eye to eye with them, you understand them. You understand why they will act, what they'll do, and why they'll act in the way they will. So war at the level of ideology and culture is just to inform people in the battlefield, just to inform the warriors, for you to know who the deepest part of your enemies are. There's 2 sides to the ideological war in its most and simplest and most essential aspect. Either there is a creator or there is no creator. This is the starting point of left and right. This is the starting point of good and evil. This is the starting point of right and wrong. There's no further way to reduce this. There's no debate about it. One is correct, one is not correct. There's no way to further discuss the matter. If there is a creator, by implication, these things are affirmed. There is a purpose. No one creates without a purpose. God himself similarly. There is order. In order to create, you have to make the things do what they're supposed to do. In our particular case, the purpose of the Creator was to provide human beings with freedom, creativity, equality, meaning, compassion, These are the natural extension of the simple affirmation, there is a creator. What human beings then pursue as a result of these being created in this way is harmony, a more perfect union. I watched at the beginning of our arrivals today so many hugs and tears and seeing old friends, and this is harmony. This is the feeling that human beings seek and desire. Our founders naturally noticed that. We seek a more perfect union. We seek those occasions more and more and more. If there is no creator, it means that something is being put higher than the living God. In the case of the Enlightenment thinkers, human reason was put higher than God. In the case of the Marxist thinkers, matter is placed higher than God and higher than the human soul. And in the case of woke ideology, system is put higher than even human identity. You do not have any God-given identity. You are the fruits of a system. I'll explain that more deeply. It's deep. It's really important for us to know this, to fight the fight we're fighting. Once the woke claim is established that my identity is the outcome of what the system produces, the only thing that is available for me is resistance. The end for a God believer is this pursuit of harmony. The end for a non-believer is the pursuit of resistance, because the system creates creates oppression. The system creates oppression. So I'm an eternal victim. My power lies in the ability to destroy, the projection of social virtue, and the pursuit of quote-unquote social justice, for which I bear no responsibility for anybody else's. It's always the other that has caused the harm. This is the binary, this is the fundamental split in the nature of the ideological battle. So very briefly, there's three major moments of removing God from the position of creator. In the Enlightenment, they worshipped reason. It began with I'll touch on this in a second, but basically the corruption of the clergy turned the French Enlightenment thinkers against the clerics, which they extended to be against God himself, God. And so the Enlightenment thinkers believed that you could come up with human reason could come up with beautiful ideas of how to run things that did not have the ugly corruption of the church. The resistance ended up as the French Revolution. It wasn't, within not even 8 years, it ended up not so beautiful after all. It was the guillotine and blood running through the streets of Paris. Marxism was a reaction against the order of industrial greed. Their resistance was the Bolshevik Revolution. Instead of tens of thousands of people brutally murdered, over 100 million people were murdered under the influence of Marxism. Again, any time you try to understand all of reality without the affirmation of a creator, you will put something in its place. Resistance will be the nature of the human response, and it will end up in unimaginable levels of human genocide. The woke revolution or woke ideology has not shown its capacity to destroy. But people who are attentive know that there are a great many people influenced by woke beliefs that think that approximately 2 billion people is the right amount of people. You're familiar with this. So if we think 100 million from Marxism, from materialism, was a lot to lose. if wokeism ever gains the day, if wokeism ever gains the power, the loss of human life will be far in excess even of Marxism. It's inevitable. In the same period of time, there was the reaction or response from believers, from the faithful. So each time there was an act of removing God, there was a Christian reaction. So at the time of, originally, Christendom of the medieval time tried to harmonize the ruling of human beings with the clergy and the kings and the clergy as sharing over organizing human affairs. That became impossibly corrupt, and the Enlightenment reaction was remove God out of the picture, put in human reason. In response to that, so with the corruption and failure of Christendom, the response to that was the Reformation and Counter-Reformation. I'll touch on that. At the second time, after the Marxist attack on human life, replacing God, there was a reaction of Christian social awareness. The end of colonies, the rise of women's rights, the end of slavery, the rise of racial equality, etc. There is yet, just as there was a remove God movement, there is yet one more act of Christianity, one more act of believers that's needed to meet this more sophisticated philosophical and ideological movement. Wokeism is more sophisticated and more difficult to disprove than Marxism. Its potential harm is greater, and the call to Christians and believers is greater. And that's what we are, that's what the settlement exists to invite and to advocate for. A rise of Christian and spiritual and religious stance that is greater than the final philosophical attack on God and human beings. Okay. So when Christendom collapsed, widespread corruption of the clergy, there's a reaction. It causes anti-clericalism, the French Revolution, rationalism, and humanism. Reason and human beings are greater than God. It ends up in the French Revolution. And so, let me see. Yeah, that's what I just said. It moves from philosophy to ideology. This is the second thing I'd like us to pay close attention to. Rousseau wrote this kind of elegant and kind of love of nature book, Reveries of the Solitary Walker. Kind of walking around the pond and enjoying nature. And it was a big part of rationalist thought. They thought this was the greatest. The mean church and the corrupt priests and the tithes and the corruption, it's all true. And so with human reason, why don't we just care for each other? Why don't we just love each other? Why don't we just love nature? We can figure this out. We don't need the evils of a church. Within less than 8 years, you're trying to walk to work, you're trying to walk your kid to school, and there's skulls rolling in front of you, the guillotine, and there's crowds cheering and delighted, not unlike social media today with the loss of our beloved brother Charlie. The French Revolution was a bloodthirsty rage against what they thought were the evil ones. Anytime you replace the authority of God with human authority, it always ends the same way. And this is where this fight stands today, and why we gather and why we try to introduce some thoughts on what is our next step, what is our final self-manifestation that will put to rest once and for all those ideologies which sound sweet but always end up in unimaginable ugliness. So the response to the Enlightenment was the Reformation. The Reformation was a new stufa, a new level, a new manifestation of Christian life. It brought the more direct God-human relations. The printing press, the Gutenberg Bible, the Bible in the vernacular. You were removing one step between us and God. This was the Reformation. And the Counter-Reformation of the Catholic Church also reformed the Catholic Church. And they too became a community with much more access to God. So in response to I'll use the term, satanic perversion of tempting people with this nice feeling and liberate from the oppressive church, created this violent, bloodthirsty crowds in the streets. The Reformation responds with kind of, God will not be defeated. And they didn't make a Christian army to go roll over these people. What they did was increase the God-human relationship. As a result of that, what happened to Western civilization is remarkable. There were massive advances in human knowledge. There was massive prosperity. As Weber, the Christian sociologist, Weber talked about the Protestant work ethic. All kinds of wealth was developed. Modernity, the missionaries brought all kinds of hospitals, medicine, schools, roads, etc. What happened as a result of the stepping up and purification and increase of Christian life is remarkable. What happened in the world, and all this is based on increasing God-human relationship, and so humanism and rationalism declined. It declined, but tragically, all that wealth, all that progress, all that modernity, tragically, the inheritors of that, the American industrialists who presented themselves as the fruit of Christian life, became very corrupt. There was what I call social stratification, unchecked economic power, and once again, the reaction is placed against God and against the human soul. And so, despite the beauty of the Reformation and the flourishing of the Reformation, instead now what happens is that the American experiment, which we know is founded by God, the living God, it says so, our documents say so, but America's wealth flourished to the extent that the Christian church could not keep in check the extreme degree of economic greed and social stratification. Thus, so rises Marx. Again, just a philosopher. Labor theory of value. What was it? The dialectic. The dialectic.
Materialism.
What is it? Dialectical materialism and historical materialism. He's a philosopher. He's a philosopher. Philosophers never do much harm other than just have bad ideas. They're self-absorbed. They're bothersome. Once again, philosophy becomes ideology. You go from workers' paradise to 100 million dead, killed, gulags. If anyone is old enough to have ever been in a communist country, it's oppressive beyond imagining. It's suffocating. It's suffocating. Even a day there, you feel your humanness being sucked out of your soul in communist countries. But it sounded very nice that the workers finally have fair pay and solidarity, and they run the factories. This one of the things I want us to ponder today is that so far wokeism is primarily manifest as a philosophy, a sick and bizarre philosophy. I'll explain a little bit about it. In response to Marxism, all the critique, all the hatred of God, all the militant atheism that was manifest by Marx Again, Christianity steps up, or again, you can say Christ steps up, or God steps up. And there's a new spiritual awakening in Christendom, in Western civilization, where some of the residual evils start to decline. The end of slavery, the end of colonies, the end of monarchies, suffrage, women's right, the women's vote, racial equality. I see so many videos of the 50s where, like, what did we see? Danny Kaye and Satchmo singing the other night. Remember that? Yeah. And then, or you see that film 42, with that manager and Jackie Robinson. And you hear the youngsters who know nothing of American history say, it's a racist nation. And we grew up, I know racism, there is, it exists. But we were making so much progress, we were so close together, and still are generally. And with all of this, even the power of Marxism, even the power of Marxism, which had the capacity to challenge the United States, to actually take over 2/3 of world's affairs, still Christ won, or God won, or American won, or the godly civilization won. Again, Christianity stepped up with a response to all of Marx's complaints. So Reagan's Christian America. He didn't call it that, but each civilization manifests its spiritual roots. Defeated communism. But here's something, no offense to anybody. He didn't defeat communism. What he defeated was the military force of the Soviet Union. Communism was defeated economically and militarily, but not ideologically. And so this is why it's important for me to be here today and to be with you today. A lot of people think that the election of President Trump now marks the end of wokeism. It's a similar thing. That's why I want to at least call our attention to the ideological matter. Yes, he's defunding it. Yes, it's on the run. Yes, he's suing Harvard. Yes, he's suing Columbia. Yes, he's legislatively he's defunding the closing of USAID, the throttling of the Soros, corruption and funding of the evil. But when someone said, wokeism is dead, wokeism is on the run, wokeism is over, I said, lose the midterm elections and see how much wokeism is over. It must be destroyed at its root. It must be destroyed ideologically. And you guys know more than ever, the Californians know that it must be undermined as an ideological force. And this is the only thing I want to share with you. This is the only reason why I'm speaking, is that we cannot be lulled the same way post-communist America was lulled. Communism, the problem with communism is not that it's an economic disaster. That is a problem. And the human misery that caused, that is a problem. There's one single problem with communism. It's atheism. It denies God. It denies God. And so this was not addressed. And what happened after the fall of communism, and again, no offense, I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but to my feel, Christianity did not stand on moral grounds. It did not stop the decline of sexual morality. It didn't take a strong stand. I was the head of an Episcopalian church in my neighborhood. I was, it's called Warden of the Vestry. That church now might as well be a bacchanalian feast. Its flag is the trans flag that's of the Episcopalian church, and this didn't happen overnight. It meant that with the fall of communism, the Christian and religious self-affirmation that declared that showed the superiority of a God-founded nation, it didn't follow through ideologically, morally. And so there's nothing greater and more hopeful than, to me anyway, I'll just say personally, than the reascension of President Trump to inherit the presidency once again, thanks to the American voters who were actually, apparently some of them were counted in 24 for a change. Anyway, but for us to believe that you can legislate away or economically drain away, or we cannot. And that's why we're working at the level of culture and working at the level of ideology. And the reason why I want to speak is to just offer you a few thoughts on how woke people think. What is the philosophical root of wokeism? Here is wokeism at the philosophical level. This might be my most important slide. Race, gender, and sexuality are socially constructed. Categories accessible only in individuals' lived experiences and social positioning. Identities are not fixed essences. They are socially constructed by power knowledge and narratives designed to dominate, humiliate, and marginalize. Everybody who you are fighting on your school boards who is advocating for the undermining of children's innocence, everybody who you are fighting who are advocates of DEI, of CRT, of open borders, the problem is we try to debate them, and we are talking about two opposite things. They do not believe there is any such thing as a black person. They do not believe there is any such thing as a woman. We have a Supreme Court justice that isn't able to identify what is a woman. It's not because she's an unintelligent woman. Forgive me for no. It's not, but they do not believe there is such a thing. So when our Declaration of Independence say we are created equal, it's the creation that they're denying. What exists, black people don't exist. What exists is the social system of the production of narratives for the pursuit of dominance that ends up with someone who holds a social identity. A social identity, my social identity is that I have been oppressed by things that people identify as my race. So we are not talking on the same playing field. There is no such original identity because that requires a creator. The rejection of God is so sophisticated in the woke movement. It will not allow you to claim that you exist. You are the product of social narratives. I don't know if this is too slippery, but is it too difficult? Is it too difficult? Okay, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. So when you're eye to eye with a school board person, and you're saying, how can you do this to a child? How can you possibly believe that somebody says that I was born in the wrong body, and the conservatives are saying that's a form of mental illness? They don't believe those categories actually exist. And that's where the fight is. That's where the fight is. If you have an identity, it means there's a God. And that's what they're that far down the line. The Marxists weren't smart enough. Oh, you're a capitalist, or you're a laborer. They didn't recognize that by giving reified, what means like embodied identities, that they come from somewhere. The woke ideology is so thorough that any single thing you want to say exists, they deny philosophically. Because if you say something comes from somewhere, Sooner or later, you got to get to God. They block God before you can even open your mouth. And that's why you'll have somebody sitting there at a congressional hearing, testifying before Congress, and saying that to call 2 + 2 4 is cultural. Yeah, it's racism. It's racism because it comes out of the white Enlightenment thinking. They now cut you off at the pass. It's like a grandmaster chess person. You move like the game starts, you move your pawn, and he smiles because he knows you've lost. It's like that. Wokeism is at that level of anticipation. You'll never get to God. You can't even get to yourself. That's what we're facing ideologically. So, the key ideologies of wokeism are gender-destroying ideology, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not because we don't like diversity, not because we don't like equality, not because we don't like inclusion. What they are saying is that there's nothing. You're not including women, you're not including black people, you're not including lesbians, you're simply creating a field in which what the system has created must be affirmed. Anything marginalized must be affirmed. Like the open border thing, it's not only just to destroy the electoral map. It isn't only that. It's a belief that there's no such thing as ownership. There's no such thing as property. There's no such thing as boundaries. There is no such thing. It's a fundamental denial of the nature of reality philosophically. The applied arenas of woke ideology are resistance, gender destruction, social justice, eco-terrorism, racialism, and censorship. Okay. So the final and fifth part of this little presentation I put together is what can be done about it. What would be our reformation to conquer the Enlightenment? What would be our American social era to conquer Marxism? What will be our Christian, religious, spiritual affirmation of God to conquer wokeism? What will be our next phase of Christian life, of Christ, of God, of our founders, of the founding of our country? This is what I want to look at now. The starting point for any American is the founding documents of our country. The U.S. Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the U.S. Bill of Rights. That's all we got. That's what our country is built on. That's where we start. If we cannot find the resources in our founding documents, we got to found a new country. I don't believe that's necessary. The content of what's found in these documents is, A, there's a creator. B, human beings have an identity from our creator. And our identity is clearly enumerated. We are free. We are equal. We're sovereign. We're self-determined and pursue happiness. That's what we do. That's how we're created. We give consent to be governed. And we are created with inalienable rights enumerated in the Bill of Rights. That's our identity. If anybody wants to ask you, oh, what are you exactly? I'm created. I'm free. I'm equal. And I have inalienable rights. That's my only identity. All other identities are secondary. I'm a woman. I'm black. I'm tall. I'm short. I'm smart. I'm dumb. I'm a pain in the behind. These are all secondary characteristics. I have only one identity as an American. It's clearly enumerated. The rest are secondary, and they're made for the beauty of our interactions. Ideological war cannot be won at the axiomatic level. The word axiom means it can no longer be argued. That's why our founders said in the Declaration, we know these truths to be self-evident. Once you say something is self-evident, you can't argue to defend it. It's an axiom. Here's the whole argument at the axiomatic level. There is a God. No, there isn't. That's the argument. You can't get further than that. Human beings have an identity given by God. No, they don't. No degree of philosophical sophistication is going to win this war. Ideological battles cannot be won at the axiomatic level. The only way ideological battles are won are at the embodied level. For Christians, we talk about incarnation. Philosophy incarnated. The ideals of our country incarnated. So here's the argument of our opponents or our enemies. There is a creator, says the believer, says the American, says everybody in this room, says the founders of our country, says those who were ready to go to war against the British. Oh, really? If there is a creator, then why do people who believe that treat each other like crap? Especially others who say the very same thing in a slightly different way. That's the beginning of the rejection of, at the axiomatic level, when you say we're created by God with inalienable rights. You have to affirm a creator to affirm your inalienable rights. And those who struggle with that say, if there is a creator, why do the people who make that claim are so nasty to one another?
Because they're fascists.
I don't think so, Bob, but this is the question. This is the question. And the closer you get, like an ecumenical fight between Christians is almost worse than a fight between Christians and Jews or between Hindus and Muslims. So this is the challenge to anybody who's going to say I'm a God-fearing person. They're met with that challenge. The second thing is that human beings are created to be sovereign, ruled by no one but God, and free to pursue happiness. The challenge to that is, how in God's name can this possibly produce safe individuals who are not going to create marginalization? You're answerable to nobody. And you're free to pursue happiness. How is this not going to create marginalized human beings? That's the challenge to those who want to affirm the American, not dream, American reality, our lives. Ideological war is won at the lived level. When you're at axioms, there is a God, no there's not. I have an identity from God, no you don't. We're equal, no you're not. No we're not. At that level, the only place to fight that fight is at the lived level. So the first one I introduced is, why are people treating each other like crap? Why are believers so harmful to each other, so harsh to each other? And I'm talking about a next step up, a version of God affirmation that wins over wokeism. At the lived level, our next step higher is victory in ecumenical love. It's a demand and an obligation. If we're going to be in this fight, we have to transcend our parochial differences at the denominational level. If we cannot defend our claims to be affirming of a creator. And victory in interreligious love. If someone says there's a creator, I may not get it. You're a Muslim, you're a Hindu. I don't get what you're claiming. But if you say there's a creator, I must consider you an ally. because those that say there's not are doing great harm. So the next higher version of that which will be victorious over the satanic ideological force that's wokeism must define itself with these new horizons and new challenges. Is that all right? Is that all right? We must. Say there's a Hindu. I'm a Christian. This Hindu seems to believe in every imaginable type of God. It's like turning on Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, what the heck? What the heck? You say, but listen, what do I know? What do I know? We'll see when we arrive before the throne. And so you and the Hindu friend arrive before the throne, and you say, see, there I was right. And the Hindu says, but look, God has many faces. And you say, no, it just looks like that to you in front of God himself. So give whatever believer, whatever breaks he needs or she needs. It's the only way we can create enough sufficient force as the affirmers of God, meaning, order, truth, harmony, compassion, love. That side of things, we have to do it right in front of us. So here's Billy from Southern Baptist trying to teach this poor Muslim woman the lyrics to the old rugged cross, and he's pointing to where in the song it is, and those tiny little words you can't even read anyway. And there's that poor Muslim girl trying to figure it out. And God bless them all. I love it. I love it. Okay. The ideological war, lived war, second part. How on earth can we produce safe individuals who are free, sovereign, ungoverned by anybody, pursuing happiness? I want to talk about what's the cartography and cultivation. I made up those words. Where cartography and cultivation of free, sovereign individuals pursuing happiness, and how are they not going to create oppression, exploitation, marginalization? How are we going to prevent this? Okay, on cartography, where are these individuals situated? They're situated in families. They're situated in families. That's where you are on the map. That's where you are on the map. If you're parents, you're there. Then if you're a husband, you're there. If you're a wife, you're there. If you're the younger sister, elder sister, younger brother, elder brother. This is the grid. This is the map. This is what produces safe individuals. This is the prism. This is how God's design, how America's design is safe. Because a person located there is already taught how not to harm people. Supposing one of your children is autistic, is he going to be all right in your family, or she? Absolutely, absolutely. They'll be just fine. Supposing one of your adopted children is Vietnamese or black or white, are they going to be all right in your family? Absolutely. They'll be absolutely fine. This structure, that it is the place that is designed to where free, sovereign individuals pursuing happiness do not create marginalization, do not create exploitation, oppression. They do not. Parents have absolute power. Little ones, they have no choice. But they're not oppressed in the family. So, sadly, some families, but. So that's what I call the cartography. Where are we located on the map? We're safe in. People in families are not a danger. They're not a danger. And then on the cultivation, there's the generations. There's the grandparents, the parents, and the children. There's the inherited wisdom. There's the people of the present moment fighting their behinds off, trying to make enough money, trying to get new sneakers, trying to get their kids through soccer and everything else. They're on the front line. Their parents are helping them from the grandparent position. And the children are the future. So there's the next thing that in my view, what Christianity and what religion has to become, it has to grow in two things. It has to grow in a stronger and clearer affirmation of the family, and not be wishy-washy about moral behavior, about human identity, about the obligations of husbands and wives. That declined. We didn't have the courage. We didn't have the courage. I don't want to be a guy up here with judgment in my, but I watched, over the course of past, few decades or something like that, after the 60s, I don't know any parent who thinks that their child isn't supposed to be sexually active as a teenager. It became part of common life. Pastors of churches, they don't think that's odd or wrong in a way. That can't be. A sufficient version or form or force of Christian and spiritual life in America must have the courage to reaffirm family. And the loss of Charlie, if there's anything we're seeing, he was kind of a birth of a Christian leader who wasn't afraid to say that. He didn't only speak of our salvation. He didn't only speak of his personal relationship with Jesus. He begged people to marry. He begged people to have family. It's very exciting to me, because this is the Christianity that must become. It must become capable of loving every God-affirming person, and it must be capable of fully affirming that structure which God and nature produced, that made it possible for God to risk creating human beings that are free, sovereign, and pursue happiness. All right, that's what I have to say. I really am grateful for your time and attention.